Alrighty, I think we'll get started. Thanks everyone for coming. This talk on 3D design and BIM in practice. Just going to do a couple of intros and then a couple of audience questions to kick off with. So my name is Miles. I'm the Innovation Director at Mount Lighting. My focus is on developing Mount's specification offering really, so BIM files are obviously critical to what we do, at the same time as working closely with our electrical contractor partners. Ryan, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ryan Wigham. I'm an associate architectural technologist with Space Group, an architectural company in Newcastle. Also work with BIMstore, who create digital assets for manufacturers.
Hello, I'm Bethan Hellings. I am head of design for a fit-out company in Bristol called Avant Interiors.
Good. Okay. Do you want to just talk about your relative journeys into 3D design? Go on, Ryan, you. Because you the opposite.
I guess my career started as a plater welder in the banks of the Tyne, so a far cry from architectural offices. In about 2001, I switched into architecture. At that point, we caught the tail end of drafting boards, and predominantly we're using 2D AutoCAD for all of our projects. In the mid 2000s, space architecture, or wearing a net as it was known at that point, decided to change how they were going to create their projects, and BIM was the route they wanted to go down, and that's what we did as a company. So all of our architectural projects from the mid 2000s up to now have been created in Revit. I think the first project that I worked on fully from start to end as a Revit project was 2009.
So in terms of my background, I'm slightly different to Ryan, that I started off working for quite a large architectural practice, and everything was models in 3D from the off. So I started off modeling in 3D, working on some quite big kind of BIM level 2 projects. That was just the bread and butter for about 10 years. 3 years ago, I made the switch across to the contractor side, and I've gone to kind of design and build fit-out companies, and I've kind of found the opposite, where I'm almost getting pulled back, not backwards, but away from 3D design in certain directions. So my role is kind of trying to bring people up to speed, I suppose, and bring that 3D design into part of our day-to-day practice.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point of the talk really, is that we see there's a good take-up of BIM in general in the design space, pure design space, but the design and build space is a little bit less well populated with BIM, is kind of our perception of it as manufacturers. So that's useful. So yeah, we'll go through a bit of the structure of the talk. We do want questions as we go along, because we want to make it a little bit interactive, so don't feel afraid to just chuck your hand up and ask a question. We'll field them as we go along. So first of all, just a quick idea of how each of you is into BIM. Just stick your hand up if you use BIM, Revit all the time regularly in your work. Okay, cool. And how many use it some of the time, but not all the time? Good. And anybody doesn't use it at all? Good. Okay, so we have a blend. Good. Okay, so next question. How many of you have had a design go off the rails because somebody didn't read a 2D drawing properly? Is anybody going to say no? Exactly. So that's the kind of perception we're coming from, that in principle, designing in 3D allows you to make better quality design decisions as you go along, rather than the endless back and forth of PDFs in 2D, which we've all had too much of, PDF fatigue, endless markups basically, and then mistakes due to interpretation. So of course that's another issue. So Beth, do you want to just give an anecdote of a very common mistake that you see happening?
Something that I see, I've done it myself personally, I see it all the time, just something really simple. We can see in the showroom here, not saying you've done it wrong here, but pendants and light fittings, the amount of places I go to and they're just mounted at the wrong height, or the times I've turned up on site and a pendant's been too low or too high, and you have to talk really nicely to the electricians and get them to move it. But just simple things like that. So it doesn't always have to be like big coordination of projects, but just little details. But you can really just, really simply eradicate those issues really early on in the project by showing everything modeled in 3D.
Yeah, from the beginning. Yeah. Ryan?
Yeah, I think one thing for me, I don't want to sit here and say we all have mistakes on site, and whether a 2D drawing or a 3D drawing will make any difference or change things. A common mistake that we would always come across would be ceiling heights clashing with ductwork, which wouldn't get picked up until things started getting built on site. Whether a 2D drawing of a 3D would have made any difference, I'm not too sure. But at a design stage, when you're seeing it in 3D, or if you're working with a contractor and you're looking in 3D, you'd be able to see much easier that there's a duct running where the ceiling should be.
It still comes down to everybody looking at the drawings.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's can't magically get rid of that problem. For us, it's about sightlines and glare of lighting design, because again, it's so much easier to visualize in 3D than it is in 2D. And elevations are such a pain to have to look at 4 different drawings for a single room. It's a bit dinosaurish. So I think we're probably preaching to the choir mostly in this audience anyway, so that's good. So I think one of the questions I'd like to just tease out is why design and build seems to me to have been a bit slower to adopt than the pure design practices, because that's where we see the kind of growth area is from the 3D point of view. What's your perception of why that is? Because you're coming into it facing the problem.
Yeah. So the main thing is, I guess, there's a bit of fear around it, and also a bit of kind of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If people are just used to how they work and it's working, even if you say, well, this will work a bit quicker or this will help with these problems, it's like, well, yeah, but I can still do it this way, and it's habit, and it's fear of change, I suppose. It is an investment to switch to something. Go from AutoCAD over to Revit, for example. It's investment in software, hardware, time, training. But I think it's to try and diffuse the perception that the investment isn't worth it, and long term it is. It does work out more beneficial.
Yeah, and it's the long term point that's the key one, isn't it? Because that's really where the value comes, especially is even after PC, after the handover process. If you're designing a BIM and you've got a building asset there, that makes a big difference. And I think from our point of view as well around the lighting design, helping clients to get buy-in around the lighting design is so much easier in 3D than it is in 2D. They can look at a 2D drawing and it just doesn't mean anything to them. Whereas putting it in 3D, you can we've even discussed before the possibility of designing different lighting scenes in 3D and then being able to visualize those. That just makes such a big difference, and that helps us, because if we're selling a visual concept rather than just a set of lights, that helps us as well, because there's some thought has gone into the process. So I think that's why I think we're kind of summing up why 3D design is a game changer for us. Anything to add, Ryan?
Not really. I think you've covered everything from your aspect. I was speaking with our CEO about that question, and it isn't what we see. So it just shows how it's like insular pockets. All the projects that we do are in BIM, or everything's 3D, including a lot of the D&B projects that we work on. So it looks like there's still a lot of work to be done in getting people converted onto working with 3D.
Probably just to add on that one as well is just to note that we are just part of a longer term process. The design is just part of getting that finished result on site, and it's easier if the entire kind of chain along the whole way kind of is used to working in the same way. And if you get kind of front end, you're doing it all in 3D, and then you hand it over to the contractor and they're not used to it, or they're not, ideally want to bring everybody along from start to finish until it's delivered using the same software or the same process.
Because otherwise stage 2 and 3, maybe even 4 will be 3D, and then after that it all falls to pieces, and that's a waste of time for everyone. So yeah, that's a good point. Good. Okay. We just put together a little video of the practice of adjusting something in 3D, just to demonstrate how much easier it is to do in 3D than in 2D. So Ryan created this video really just to demonstrate how easy it is to make a serious impact to what the client sees on site in a 3D visualization format, because so much of the time we're requiring these clients to make those decisions, and to give them the ability to understand the difference that we're proposing is what we're trying to get to, isn't it?
Hello and welcome to Mount Lighting's Beyond the Blueprint 3D Design and BIM in Practice. In this video, we're looking to explore how we are designing and drafting in 3D as an architectural practice using BIM. What you're looking at here is a live project designed in Revit and being viewed through a plugin. All the items that you can see are families, such as the mount lighting example here. And this is what's put together in a 3D environment to make that project, generating drawings and views. So here you can see a BIM environment. In this case, it's Revit. On the left-hand side, a familiar plan view. It isn't actually 2D, but it's used to generate that 3D model. So now I'm just going to put in a 3D view, an isometric view. So that gives me a eye-level view of the area I'm designing in. And I've selected an object there. You can see that's a mount lighting family. In here, I'm just going to put in a section. Now in 2D, you would be adding your section reference and redrawing that section. But when it's a 3D, it's by putting that section reference on, it's automatically creating a 3D view of that. And on the right-hand side, you can see in the 3D view, I've just gone to that section. You can model that in the actual section itself, or in this case, the 3D view, I'm just adjusting the clipping sections to make it a bit easier to navigate. And then you're getting a good view of this project as a 3D object. So in the case of the families, you can go to an area such as BIM Store, look for the manufacturer's product page, and you can see Mount's portfolio of BIM files. So this allows a designer to find the object that they want, download it, and add to their project. So you can see this M-line, slimline, hexagon object. Mount have a viewer here, so you can see what that product looks like. This isn't BIM, it's just a viewer to show the user what the product looks like. We have a bit of information, some product literature. And then you can download the object. Once you have that product downloaded as a 3D file, you can start adding it to your project. So you can see here, I'm opening up a drawing. So if you're used to working in 2D, that's going to be a 2D plan. In this case, it looks a 2D plan, but it is generated by the BIM. So in this ceiling plan, I'm selecting the files that, in this instance, we're going to change to a different product. You can see they've highlighted in blue there in the 3D views. And then using the product selector, I'm going to change it to the alternative design. And you can see that updates straight away. And that will do that on any views that they're added to, including any schedules. These particular files have a drop parameter that allows us to adjust the height. This will be in line with Mount's manufacturer recommendations. But it's just allowing you to create a really accurate design. So again, just amending the 3D view to get to a correct visual. We can use a plugin, in this case it's Enscape. Now this allows us to generate a real-time interactive space of the project. So it's useful for showing clients, planners, whoever it may be, that aerial. And this is live. So if you are changing that design with your design team sat there looking at this, it would automatically update.
We did a bit of a discussion about jargon busting, didn't we? Because we wanted to kind of clarify the difference between BIM and 3D design in principle. Do you want to just identify those differences? Because I think that's an important distinction in overcoming the fear that you've been talking about.
Yeah, so I think people hear the word BIM and they get a little bit scared of it, because proper kind of, I suppose, BIM level projects, they are very data heavy, and there's a lot more to it than just the 3D modeling. So it's all the information and the data that goes into the model as well. And if you're very new to it, it can become really overwhelming, and then it can really put you off. But not all projects have to be a BIM project, shall we say. A lot are in the kind of public sector, university work, for example. That's just standard. But it doesn't mean that you can't, for any project, just model in 3D or model with kind of a BIM principles, shall we say. So you don't have to kind of have a requirement to have a BIM project to be able to model in 3D. Yeah, and the scale of the project doesn't really matter either. So it doesn't necessarily only need to be used for large, big projects with lots of information. You can just do a small little toilet block if you want, and the benefits of just being able to see it in 3D is still relevant.
Yeah. And it's also worth mentioning as well, do you think that there's different levels of BIM design? Because you can worry a lot about the information that's in the model, or you can just use it as a visualization tool for client purposes. And understanding that distinction is important as well.
100%. And visualization is not something new. It's something we've been doing for a long time, and employ specialist people. That's all they do, and they do it brilliantly. But if you already modeled something so far, it does save a lot of time if you can just give the visualizer a model and go, there you go, it's half done
Make it
for you.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Good. Okay. And Ryan, do you want to just talk about different softwares available? Because obviously everybody talks about Revit as if it's the beginning and end of everything.
Yeah,
to a large extent it is. But not entirely.
absolutely. There's a bunch of different softwares available. BIM's just an acronym. It isn't software. The guys who put their hand up said they've been working in BIM. It could be whatever software it is, your AutoCAD, Bentley. Yeah, but it's quite often Revit. Everything I'm talking about here in the video we've done is Revit. That's what we used as a practice. I think in the mid-2000s, when the company decided that they were going to use BIM, they chose Autodesk Revit because we were using AutoCAD, the same software vendor, and at the time they thought that company's got the deepest pockets, probably end up having the best software, which is debatable, but it does what we needed to do. Just everyone who put the hand up said they're using BIM. Is it Revit, Autodesk, Revit you all use? Yeah, no, that's good to hear.
I just want to cover some ideas about how to get started into BIM if, say, a small D&B company or whatever is scared of starting. What advice would you give to them to get on that journey? Because we want people to just start, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's just to not wait for the right project, but just to start using it. And we made a good point the other day when we were talking kind of internally about people coming through now out of university and just coming into the workplace, and they are just well versed at using it already. So just make the most of that, make the most of the skills that are coming through, and get them started. Get the younger, more eager,
Tech savvy
the
ones.
tech savvy people. Just put them on something, test it out, and then it doesn't have to. You don't have to gradually. You don't have to. Switch the whole team over all in one go. It's literally, you could just do a gradual process and just start using it, and then gradually roll it out to the whole team. And also, don't be afraid of employing people that are proficient in it.
Pre-skilled, basically.
pre-skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just because you're not using the software currently, that doesn't mean that you can't. You kind of cut out those people from, your what's the word for recruitment? Yeah. So you kind of get rid of a load of people who you think aren't suitable for your business because you think you might be overskilled. Just make the most of it. Employ people that are good at using the software and just to bring them on board and let them kind of teach you and get the maybe younger members of the team or other members of the team on board one by one.
Let the process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
break it up into smaller chunks.
And get it going that way. Yeah, it's good. And that's what you've been doing in real life, isn't it?
Correct.
Just
Yes, yeah.
bring it into an organisation.
So I came on board and they were still in 2D software completely, and they've just scrapped it completely and brought me on board. And now I'm gradually kind of one by one bringing the rest of the team along.
Onto the dark side here. Good. Okay. And just say if you could make a few comments about the Enscape as a visualization example that we've used, but there's other plugins, aren't there, that can be used for various different purposes. Ryan, do you want to just touch on Enscape? What other things on the visualization side are there other than Enscape? What else do you use, etc.?
I mean, there's a whole raft of different tools you can use, which you guys are probably aware of. Straight out the box, Revit, not Revit, has its own walkthrough, but as a company we use Enscape, so the video would have shown how we utilize that in an environment with clients, end users, planners, whoever it is that we're trying to show a design for. We also have a visualization section within the company who will use 3ds Max and then put it into gaming engines, basically. That again, there's a various different bits of software that allows you to create some really cool views, whether it's a walkthrough or a render. I just think back to when I first started working in architecture. If we wanted a render, it would go off to a company. It would take forever. It would cost a fortune. Whereas now, like a card monkey like me can smash an incredible realistic image in minutes. It's pretty mind blowing.
If you've got the model to start with.
If you've got the model to start with, yeah.
So if there was one misconception you wanted to get rid of in this whole encouraging people to come on the journey, what would it be?
I think my misconception of BIM is it's just a 3D model. It's it's a lot more than pretty pictures. That by working in BIM or working in a 3D design, you're creating a digital asset. So you've not just got pretty pictures. You've got your drawing. You've got your sheets, your drawing sheets, or your schedules. It allows you to work within a federated model with different members of your design team instantly, rather than sending things back and forth. I think that's probably a good misconception to describe.
And to get rid of, yeah. Good. Beth?
The misconception I would say is that it's just too expensive. There is, we can't deny that there is an upfront cost to it. Investment, but longer term, it does work out, making the design process quicker, smoother, less costly mistakes on site. So overall, it is worth the investment.
Worth the plunge, yeah. Good. Okay, cool. Any questions so far? Any frustrations with it that you'd like to get some ideas about how to overcome?
But I'm going to be brutally honest. I am dinosaur in this totally. Interior architect, so I just work in Vectorworks and I work in plan and elevation, and I actually hand sketch when I need to communicate an idea to a client. What am I missing out on? Because obviously, like you used to, like you said, you're just used to what you're doing and stuff. And for me, it works. Yeah. But is there something I'm missing out on here that's added value to my own clients?
I think that the speed at which you can get design decisions, you might be missing out on in terms of how you sell your idea to your client. I suppose people have different ways of processing information, and not everybody is well versed at kind of reading drawings or things in 2D, and they like to see a 3D view or an image. And if the quicker you can kind of get them to see something in 3D or a visual or a model, It just really helps them go, okay, and I get it. And then you can get your design decisions a lot quicker from the client. That's probably
And probably a more solid decision as well.
yeah. Less kind of risk when you get to site and turning up and going, oh, I didn't think it was going to look like that. It's, so yeah. I mean, when you yeah.
To use it.
Yeah, so I've come across that myself, even in 3D models. You might visualize a few views, and typically the one view that you don't visualize, the client will turn up and go, oh, didn't think it was going to look like that. So yeah, so I think it's just like to not be scared of it and to think of it as a tool that you can use to really help you, just to help you to sell your design. Yeah, I think.
Any frustrations with manufacturers and how much data they're providing, how good the BIM models are? From your perspective, how well is the supply chain keeping up with what you need? As a
I find it because we use Revit all the time. If a manufacturer doesn't have a Revit model, it puts us off using them because then we have to model it ourselves. Because if, say, everything else is a BIM model, if suddenly you have a chair that's actually, I've had to make that myself, it's very jarring and then it can be misleading them with the client. So I think there is certainly quite a way to go, especially within furniture, for there to be Revit models and BIM models, really.
Yeah.
as in it's your time as well to then fill in the gap, basically. Yeah, completely. Yeah, good. Okay, any other questions?
From the contractor angle, like the end user, I can see this is brilliant if everything is coordinated. But what if the lighting, air conditioning, all the different facets? What if 2 or 3 aren't on BIM and 2 or 3 are? Is that a misconception to overcome?
Certainly is a problem, I'd say. What do you think, Beth?
Yeah, 100%. This is the challenge I face a lot being on the contractor side with our supply chain, our subcontractors. Some of them don't even model in 2D. Never mind 3D. So the coordination, you always have to be that person to have your eye on everything and coordinate everything. It just makes it easier when people are all singing off the same hymn sheet. But yeah, you can get varying degrees of skill, I suppose, especially for mechanical and electrical.
I would say we are seeing some of our electrical contractors starting to invest in it themselves, but they're even further behind the D&B market in general. So again, it's a journey to come on, and as Howard says, when there's a mix is where it gets a bit complicated, because then effectively somebody else needs to do that coordination for them or take responsibility in-house.
You can still you could link 2D drawings into it, an overlay, and kind of do your coordination that way. So that's what I do a lot of with electrical plans specifically. But yeah, it is nice when everybody all is working in the same model. It's great.
Okay. Any more questions?
So we talked about the transition from 2D to 3D, and it's obviously still a transition, but it looks like the market is definitely trending to kind of evolve. How long do you think that is going to take? We talk about some industries being really ahead of it. We talk about HVAC and mechanical not being into it. So how long do we think until we're all kind of on the same page?
Honestly, I have no idea. We were, talk about resistance to change, and it was sort of mid 2000s when we swapped over, and I personally was no, I don't want to do this, but that's 15 years ago, and so now we're still seeing people that haven't switched. So who knows?
Unfortunately, resistance to change is part of the human condition, so I don't think I doubt we're ever going to get to 100% properly.
Yeah.
But I don't know, my feeling is that probably within, I don't know, what do you reckon the adoption rate is across the interior design market in general?
I don't know. It's impossible for me to say, because you guys are obviously seeing that the D&B side of things where people aren't using it, whereas in our office we're not. We know that
Yeah, 'cause
You know,
you're using it all the time.
yeah, and a lot of the contractors that we work with are also. So I wouldn't even hazard a guess.
Don't think we're getting an answer to your question. Sorry. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it was another 10 years, because the last 10, 15%, whatever, is, and the last few percent is the kind of painful bit. But they're probably also the smaller contractors as well, so it probably doesn't matter so much. But yeah, hard question to answer. We'll see. Yeah. Good. Yeah, go on, Beth.
Just say to that, probably when kind of the people that use it every day, coming straight out of university, and it's their go-to software, when they start becoming slightly more senior levels and want to kind of, that's how they work, that's probably when it'll become the go-to for everybody.
Yep.
So yeah, probably another 10 years.
There or thereabouts. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Good. Okay. Any more questions?
I was just going to add to that from a technical point of view. If Autodesk were to enhance their ductwork families, for example, so that they're more visually, realistic. So I think there might be some work to be done there as well. It might enable.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Kevin's just saying that if Autodesk did a bit more work on the ductwork families, particularly in terms of how they look visually, is that your point? Yeah. So who does that sit with?
Well, it's one of those forms you fill in Autodesk. It's like So if everyone actually scored up D.
Yeah.
Well, I think
It's a good point.
that would create a bit more of an incentive for the mechanical guys to actually do it in 3D, because you'd be able to visualize.
Yeah. Well, what I was wondering is how much that sat with Revit themselves versus the M&E guys or mechanical guys. I don't know the answer to that, but yeah. So Procore is a general file sharing platform and commenting platform, isn't it? Okay, so that's actually easy to share the 3D back and forth. Okay, so some of the sharing platforms making it easier to share the 3D information would also help. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's a good point. I've definitely come across Procore before, but I hadn't come across that side of it. So that's a really good point. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Any more questions? Anyone? Okay. Well, there's some food downstairs, so very welcome to wander downstairs, have a look at what we got, and pick up food and drink. And thank you all for coming. Much appreciated.